Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Harika. So in this video, as I mentioned from the previous video, we are going to see how we can use a single variable in order to access all the fields that are there in an entity. So let's say in my example, I have taken an example here to demonstrate the purpose. So in this, I have a data table where I have 1 2 3 4 5 6, so 6 rows, right? I mean 6 different columns. So for these 6 columns, in order to access the variables, I have to create some names to the variables, right? So I will be creating 6 different variables. Let me come to the studio. Have my data table over here. In order to access the values from the data table, I have 6 different variables where I have provided the values against it and then assigned it. So when I run the workflow, I have a log message which shows me all the values of that particular variables corresponding to that particular row, right? Let me execute the workflow. So we can see here we've got all the information from the data table, but here if you just observe, I'm using multiple variables over here, right? So in a short time, I'll show you how I'll replace all the variables with just a single variable. Okay, and if you don't know what is a data service and how to use it and how to create entities in the fields, I would suggest you go to my channel. On my channel, you can, on the home page, you can find multiple playlists. So under data service playlist, you will find all the 3 videos which talks about the basics of the data service. So if you're jumping into this video for the first time, I would suggest you first please watch these 3 tutorials, so it will give you enough understanding of what we are going to do practically in this video. So initially, if you're aware of what is the entity and how we can create it, then we are good to go ahead. So here in this particular student info is my entity name. So under that student info entity, I have created multiple fields. So apart from system defined fields, I have class, pass or fail, section, student ID, student name, and the total, which I have the data against them from my data table. So what I'm going to do here, I don't have a data right now. So I'm going to push the data from my studio into my data service just with the help of a single variable. So firstly, we'll see in the studio how I will replace all these variables with a single variable, and after that I will also show you how we can push the data from the studio to the data service. Okay, so for that, we all know I'm just using read range. That read range will I have taken this into a student dt student table. Okay, so after that I am looping through each of the value by using for each row. So I'm assigning it here, right? So row of student name dot toString. So this student name I wanted to access here. So the first and the foremost thing, how to access the values, in order to use them in the entity, we have to initialize them, right? So I have shown in the previous video how to initialize. So I can take an assign activity here. So before to that, I have my students info created over here. So I have created a variable of type student info. If you don't know how to do that, just give a variable name and go to variable type, browse for your entity types. Okay, and then you're good to go. After that, you just have to create, in order to use it, you have to use a constructor, you have to initialize it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a collection which is out student info, just an argument. Okay, so out student info and new student info. So this is how we will initialize the entity. Okay, so I'm using a new operator and student info, which is of the type student info, and I'm assigning the whole values of this entity into the argument of out student info. So also make sure that this argument should be of type student info, data service dot student info. Let me show over here. Just the same thing what we have done initially, data service, right? So you have to find this over here. This is of type out. Okay, so all these things how you can do, I have covered very clearly in the previous videos. If you're confused because you don't know the basics, just go and watch them. That will give you a very clear understanding. Okay, so once after that's done, what I'm going to do, so let's take because this initialization has to done earlier, so let me put a small assign activity here, and then I'm going to copy the whole thing, right? We are good. And now it's time to delete all these variables and use a single variable. Let's say single argument. Okay, so I'm going to use this argument out student info. Okay, and as we all know, the entity is already created in the data service, and we have linked this particular studio account to the orchestrator account, so we have access to all the fields that were there in this particular entity. So I'm going to access student name. That's it. Okay, so out student info dot student name contains the value of student name. In the same way, out student info dot student id. So here if you just observe, you have to make sure whatever the values that you are providing here, so student name and student id both are of type text, and you have to make sure that the type mismatch should not happen, data type mismatch should not happen. So if you see here, I have a class, right? So out student info dot class, and class is of type number. So if you see, we have gotten warning, right? This is a string to decimal, so you have to convert this. Decimal dot parse, you can use. Let's check. Yes, it's gone. The error is gone. And the section is of type text. Okay, so dot section to check if it's pass or fail, and then the total. Perfect. And one more error because this is a number. Okay, cool. Right, we have assigned all the values from the data table over to the values against entity, and now it's time to delete all these variables: student name, student class, section, pass or fail, this, right? So we're just having two variables. That's it, we are good. So this will obviously show the error, so I am deleting it, and then we can just pull a log message to see all these values, or I can just keep a debug and I can show you instead of writing everything over there. But then I'll just put one breakpoint here. Cool. Now we are good to go to the next step. So let me execute this workflow and show you all these values, how they are replicating after the execution. And after this, we will push these values into the data service. Okay, let's debug this. Okay, let's go to the immediate or to the locals. And here we have out student info. So if you see, the values are generated and it shows class is 1, and the student section, student id, student name, total, pass or fail, everything is clearly replicating as per the data tables information, right? So let me put over here. So this is kind of, I can say this is kind of a collection. So this holds all the information that we have entered from each field. So out student info contains all the information. So if you see all the data that we have entered, right? Or we can watch here. It keeps changing. So here, class 3, class 6. Where is the watch? Okay. Class 6, 8. So yeah, that's how we can actually use a single variable and eliminate all other variables by using the data service entities. And now it's time to push the values from studio to the orchestrator. So for that, we need to have a package which is called data service package. So I have it in my project folder already, but if you wanted to download, just go over here and say data service. So you can just download and install this package into your local. So once after that's done, I will show you how we can push these values and how we can create entities in the data service by using the studio in the next video. I hope this is useful for you, and you can also create one thing of this sort, and you can check how you can assign the values and how you can eliminate all the variables in your workflow, and how simply you can organize just with a single variable. So if you are facing any doubt or if you're facing any challenges doing this small assignment, I would recommend you to go and let me know in the comment section. I'll try to answer, and if there is something that it will help for other people, I'll try to make a video on it. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more learnings.